is preferred returns basically debt then? If it's only, it sounds like basically like an interest rate, damn near, if you don't get any equity.
Yeah, so people will go raise money, bring in limited partners, and say, "Hey, we're going to give you a 8% return on your money." And there's a lot of investors that are okay with that right now, because it's hard to find that. It depends what you're investing in. But they feel it's better than you get at the bank. It's better than your stock markets and your cryptos right
Yeah,
now. But yeah, a lot.
interesting.
It kind of depends on the investor and also the general partner structuring it, because it's not uncommon to get a preferred return and a percentage of equity. But I do think the preferred return is the way to go, just because, yeah, if you invest in someone's property and they don't know how to run it and they're losing money, at least you're getting your preferred return back.
Right.
And especially if it's a value add deal where they have to go in and do a bunch of rehab and work, they very well could be losing money at first. So you want to make sure you're getting that preferred return paid so you get your return on your money.
Okay. And what do you think are the pros and cons of multifamily versus like single family? Like if you had to compare them.
It's easier to build value in multifamily, right? Just because you have so many more doors under one roof. And it's easier to keep track of. Like, I kind of shy away from the single family portfolios because I'm always thinking, like, wow, that's so many roofs and buildings and different locations. And
Right.
uh, that can be true with multifamily too, and things are, you have a way bigger roof probably, so does it even out? Yeah, but you can just scale multifamily and raise rents and build value so quickly, like at scale, compared to single family. But it
Right.
is, like we were talking earlier, it can be overwhelming because there's so many terms involved. So, like, you've got to kind of be well versed on definitions and vocabulary if you're going to go talk to brokers and talk to sellers and structure creative deals. And then, not to mention, like, try to go raise money and put these deals together, right? So, I think single family is an easier barrier of entry as far as just simplicity. And I think it's a good transition because a lot of the same concepts apply. So if you can learn it on the single family, then transition. I do think, a lot of people do like mixed portfolios. I personally am selling my single family that I have right now and just focusing on the multifamily because I also like that it can be passive. I can hire a good management company and put them in place. And do I still have to asset manage them or pay someone to asset manage them? Yes. But it's much more passive than trying to have, all these single family rentals.
Why is it more passive? Like what makes it more passive than single family?
Yeah, so and this would also apply, I would say, to a certain size of property. Like, you might run into some of the same problems with like a 6 unit or an 8 unit. But one thing that's really nice once you start hitting 30, 40, 50 plus units is you can generally have some on-site management. So instead of a company trying to run around and keep tabs on all these different locations that who knows how often they actually see them, you have a management company that's on site. They're, hopefully you pick a good one, so they're trained and they're good at what they need to do and they know what they need to do, and they just need a little more guidance. And in the meantime, your manager's on site every day, can walk the property, interacting with the tenants, and just has a better feel for what's going on at that specific rental as a whole. And then from there, it's kind of like I was saying, you just have to manage the manager. And you can if you don't want to do that yourself, there's companies that will asset manage for you. And I love that aspect, that you have such a presence at your rental at all times that you can keep just a better eye on it, in my
And
opinion.
that's because the property manager literally lives there, right? Like you're gonna give them a unit and then you pay them some salary and that's their job. Is that like the idea?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, but if someone's on site, that's great. But regardless of what, if they live there or not, they're there every day working on site, right? So they still see the property every day. And a lot of people do that too. They'll arrange with their manager. They'll give them like a rent credit, a rent discount, maybe free rent depending on the job and the size of the
Hmm.
property. And yeah, there's a lot to be said for a property manager that's present at night and sees what's going on with the tenants and who's being causing
Right.
disturbances and things like this. So.
Right. Gotcha. So going back to your story, so you start doing it a little bit yourself, and then tell us the journey from like the beginning of when you started doing it yourself to like how where you are now.
Yeah. So I finally, I came to those realizations, man. I got to start thinking different, doing different. If I want to get to that level, I'm going to have to step it up, right? Because I've kind of
Hmm.
plateaued. So I
Yep.
made those few investments. It was really nice because I didn't really, again, I was a limited partner, passive income. I wasn't really doing anything. They would send me the financials at the end of the month. I can look at them and they sent me a check. Like one property was like it depends how they structure it. It could be every month, it could be every quarter, it could be every 6 months. But I just thought, okay, I'm gonna really try pushing and transitioning into this. So I did have, this actually isn't related to multifamily, but my first business that I bought and depended on for income when I quit my property management job is a fishing lodge in Alaska that I own and run.
When was this?
This was in 2000, the end of 2019. So like
Okay.
3 years
That's so
ago.
random.
Yeah, yeah. It was like a dream that
That's
I
such a random
had.
thing. Like you bought a fishing lodge in Alaska?
And I actually, yeah, so I structured a creative deal, like a seller finance deal with this guy that owned the lodge, and that's how I was able to get into it.
Nice.
So that has consumed, the last few years. That's kind of consumed my summertime, which makes it a little hard. And I'm constantly working on getting that more automated so it can run itself. But then from there, yeah, that first fall that I came home from Alaska, because I quit my job in January. I was super consumed with the lodge, probably through September, October when I came home for the season back to Utah. And I started digging in. That's when I joined Sub 2 and started
Hmm.
really learning more about creative finance because I was intrigued by it from how I had bought the lodge.
Yeah.
Started doing like a little bit of wholesaling and single family stuff, and I think at that point too is when I met you at the mastermind. And so, then I started doing the multifamily Zooms in Sub 2 because I realized, oh, there's a lot of people that could probably, utilize this information. And so from there, like I found a couple deals that I wholesaled, like smaller multifamily. We did a smaller unit, like rehab and sale that I no longer own. And now have just totally focused on trying, kind of two different buy boxes. So I'm looking heavy for those 10 to 50 unit properties for creative finance deals because there's so much more seller opportunity. And I'm also looking for bigger buy boxes, like 100 plus units, that I would take to a couple of my friends that would help me tackle those, like bringing in some of the equity raise and the loan sponsoring. And yeah,
Gotcha.
that's under contract. What, on a 20 unit right now in Phoenix that we're hoping to. It's a loan
Nice.
assumption, so it's a little bit, we've got a
It's
large
annoying.
closing on it. And then, mainly my goal and quest has been this last year, just bridging that gap and getting more general partner units under my belt as opposed to the limited partner properties that I'm a part of.
So, what's the ideal amount of units, right? I've heard things like 50 units is ideal because then you can pay the property manager out of the cash flow. Is that true? What do you think? I mean, you're buying some that are 20 units. Like what do you think?
I think the ideal units is you kind of hit it right on is 50. Some people will say 40, but like 50 units and above, you're going to be able to have some present management. Now, depending on the property and its income, that might not even mean that you can afford a full-time property manager, but at
Right.
least you could probably have someone there part-time, and they still have a good presence on the property. The problem when you have a management company for like a 20 unit property is they're gonna be spread thin, and it's gonna be, they're not gonna be at the property that much. They're not gonna be spending that much time and keeping tabs on it. So it can still be done. But what I'll typically do those properties if I know that there's a close property management nearby that can also handle this property, maybe even out of their other office, right?
So how do you know that? Because that's what I'm curious about. Because I know I've always heard don't even mess with anything below 50 units. So I'm curious, like, what's your strategy with the 20 units, 30 unit ones? Are you managing them yourself? Like, are you only buying in certain areas where you know there's a property manager who'll do it? Like, how do you fold those in? Because you said you like those because it's more seller opportunities, which is cool, but also you have the problem of the management. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, so right now I'm only buying those smaller properties in Utah and Arizona because A, if I need to, I know I can manage them. I prefer not to. I also know in those areas that the management company that I used to work for will happily, and I'm specifically targeting like in Arizona, in Flagstaff or Phoenix, where I know they have other properties. So they wouldn't mind to pick up a small one just to, and they would be okay with managing it out of that other office. So yeah,
Gotcha.
picking specific markets where I know that that management company, I've already had that conversation with them and they're like, yeah, as long as it's close enough to one of the other properties, we'd pick it up.
So
Yeah.
basically, you're doing the smaller ones with your old company, more or less. Like you're just like you have such a good relationship that they're like, hey, we know Ryan. Like we'll just if he buys one near us, we'll like manage it for him and actually care about it. Is that right?
Yeah, and I mean, you could find one beyond that personal relationship, but it is like I would say vet your property management really well because, like you've heard, there's just with those small properties, there's so many people that have horror stories about the property management just wasn't paying attention to it, like they weren't taking care of the tenants. And so you can find good ones. I would say just ask them for references. And like I even knew a property management in Salt Lake. I don't know if they're still around. And they specialized in those size of units because they saw a huge opportunity there and
Right.
need for management. Yeah, it can definitely be hard. And I would just vet that property management company really well. Like, one of the hard parts is on a small property, they're going to charge you high fees. So,
Mm,
like 100 unit plus or 50 unit plus, you might only pay like 2 to 4% management fee. And how they work is they'll take a percentage of your total income, right? So when I
mm.
say 2 to 4%, that's 2 to 4% of your property's total income each
Which
month.
is like 100K a month or something like that.
Yeah, it can be big depending on your rental and other income,
Hmm.
and it can be small. So if the property is small and they're not making enough money, then they're probably going to charge you more like 10%. So a lot of
Right.
people I know will underwrite those smaller properties at like a 10% management fee, and then you want to make sure to ask them what their fee is and kind of get to know their processes and how often they plan it actually being on the property and those kind of
So
questions.
give us some questions on how to vet a property management company,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
generally.
First and foremost is always going to be like, what is your fee percentage or what's your fee structure? I've heard of some companies structuring it different than a percentage fee, but typically, if it's a small property, it might be a flat fee or they're going to have a percentage fee. So, what's your fee structure? What are you going to charge me to manage this property? Next, I would say probably really key is what kind of software are they using? There's a lot of different
Mhm.
softwares out there. Some big ones are going to be like Appfolio, Yardi, OneSide, or RealPage, but there's tons now. The important thing here is you want to know, I guess, further than what kind of software, but what kind of access will you have to the financials. So a good updated software, you're going to be able to have real time access to your financials. So,
Mhm.
say if I own this property in Utah, 100 units, I can go log into my investor portal or owner portal, and I can see today how much rent we've collected, where we're at with where our expenses lie and what the income's looking like. I can see what the current occupancy is. And so I would say, the exact software doesn't matter, like, because they're all good. They all have different features, but
It's
the
just
key
what's
here,
my access to it.
yeah, and how transparent are they making this so that I don't have to go like asking for information every time I want to know something? Because the more transparent they have to be, the more on the ball they'll be with taking care
Right,
of
of course.
each thing. And then I would ask them too what their reporting process is like. Like, are they going to send you a weekly email update? Are they going to send you just a monthly report and financials? If you want my opinion, the best way to handle that, a weekly update email every Monday or every Friday. Here's where our occupancy is at. Here's where our delinquency or rent collection's at. Here's any major things happening on the property. And then also you would want to do like a monthly reporting process where they're sending you official finalized financials for the month, which is going to show you all your income, a general ledger, your balance sheet. And so those are probably, I would say, the most important.
Gotcha.
But I would also, really dig into how much time they plan on spending at the property.
Yeah, I'm trying to include all of the questions. It
Oh
it
yeah.
cut me off. I didn't think it was gonna cut me off. Anyways,
Yep.
that stuff, and then a little bit of process, weekly email, then finally monthly report. These are my notes, guys. You can be on this stuff when if you're coming back to this and you want to know, because that's really key to me. Like, what do you ask a property management company in order to manage these ones? So, what do you think? So, like, for someone starting out, would it actually be better if they jump to 50 units? Is it actually
Yeah,
easier?
I think it is. So the problem is they become a little bit harder to find, and you're probably going to find more of those through brokers than direct to seller,
Okay.
just because a lot of people will list their properties with a broker if they're a certain size. So that doesn't always apply. Like, I'm not discouraging anyone from trying. I'm just kind of, sharing what I've found and seen. But the nice thing about that then is you find the property and you go take it to someone who you know is buying properties. And like, I'm sure we could both help connect people there. And then you just go on as a limited partner. You get some ownership equity for finding the deal. Or if you're really hard up for cash, take your cash. But your learning process is going to come from being part of that partnership and being able to observe and spectate the process of getting this whole property under contract, closed, rehab, and stabilized.
So, do you think you should get it all the way under contract? Like, do you think, like, how far should someone go? You think, like, what should someone do? Should they first just kind of be a bird dog? Should they actually try it as though you're a wholesaler and underwrite it fully, get it under contract, then bring it to somebody? Or how do you think people should do it?
I think starting out more like bird dogging, right? Because when we underwrite a deal, there's a lot that goes into it. And if you're really good at that already and you feel comfortable underwriting multifamily, then you could do that and start trying to get like send a letter of intent in and get the negotiation process started. But yeah, if you're brand new, I would recommend just find it and take it to someone. And like, I'm constantly helping people with some basic underwriting tools and methods that so they can go out and kind of be a little educated on how to underwrite to see if it's actually a deal. But some you can learn that pretty quick, get those basic skills down, and then take it to someone because yeah, it's a whole process. And typically what we do is put in a letter of intent, and then if we can come to some kind of agreement on that, we're going to put in the actual offer or purchase and sell agreement. And then from there, we're going to dive into our due diligence inspections, like physical and paperwork inspections, and, making everything's cleared off there. And then you've got to go get it approved for your financing.
Right.
So, easiest way to start, yeah, just find it, take it to someone, go get your little bit of equity in the deal, learn the process, repeat 2 or 3 times, and then go start taking down your own stuff if that's the
Okay.
direction
So
you
when
want
you
to
say taking down your own stuff, would it be, for instance, like how far do you take it? Do you like literally do everything except the property management basically, it sounds like?
go. If it's a big property, I'm definitely bringing other people into it that
Mhm.
have teams that kind of run. Like they have asset managers, they have project managers. If it needs a project, if there's a lot of value add going on in rehabbing. So big ones, I never try to take down myself for sure because it can be such a daunting
What's a
task.
big one to you?
I would say like 75 units or larger.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's nice to have the team, because then again, that's where you find people like bringing like someone that might be really good at raising capital and
Right.
someone that might sponsor your loan, right? So just to give you guys an idea too, to sponsor a loan, typically their requirements are going to be that you have a net worth equivalent or
What does
greater.
that mean? Explain to people what sponsoring a loan even means.
Yeah. So if you're sponsoring a loan, basically, like if I go find a 100-unit property, I probably wouldn't qualify for that property on my own. And let's say that we go find a property that's $50 million. Well, my net worth just isn't $50 million yet. So I'm going to go find someone that is, right. And there are people, investors out there that, you've got to have that relationship for sure. They're not just doing it for anybody. But if you can get in those groups, there's investors that they don't want to do all this work and run the property and whatever. And they just want to sponsor the loan, and that's their contribution. And for doing that, they're going to get like 20% equity in the deal, or maybe 10%,
Which is crazy.
whatever. Yeah, so they can go do that a bunch of times and create all this passive income just for sponsoring a loan. So another way of looking at it is, if you try to get your own loan, you're going to have to qualify for this loan yourself. And so your sponsor or yourself has to have a net worth equivalent or greater than the value of the property you're trying to finance. They also have to have 10% liquidity, which could be like, I'm pretty sure stocks
$5
and
million.
bonds, cash, crypto accounts, anything that they can get liquid real quick. So
Right.
yeah, if it's a $50 million property, they're going to have $5 million liquid. So those are two huge requirements that prevent people from getting a loan themselves. And, keep in mind too, like sometimes you can go assume loans right now, but I like to clarify for people. So assuming a loan means there's a loan already in place.
Can you subject to it instead of assuming a loan? I'm
The
just
only
curious.
way I found that you can realistically do that is to keep an owner on board. And so you sell or finance the deal, but you keep them on board as equity owner, right? So say they
And
have,
why? Why is that so hard to do in comparison to like single family where it's pretty easy?
yeah, there's just so much interaction between a lender and a commercial property, especially a large one, a large
Oh,
multifamily. So what
interesting.
happens is every year the lender's going to send an inspector out, like to do a physical inspection, because they want to make sure that you're taking care of their
Gotcha.
asset that they've loaned millions of dollars for. You're also typically going to have to be sharing with them some financial reports at least once a year. They want to see what your financials are, and depending on the lender, they might want to be included monthly. So yeah, it's hard because I just haven't figured out how you could actually just sub to with removing the prior owner. But I guess the only way that I found to overcome that is, yeah, you keep the prior owner. So if they own 50% of the property and they have a loan for 50%, you keep them on and give them ownership equity as the deal. They essentially become a limited partner at that point. You take over operations, and they can keep that communication with the lender open, and
But
letting
that
them
kind of
know.
sucks. Now you only own 50% of the property, right? So like that's not as cool. Like you probably want to just assume the loan at that point. Like how much does it cost? So assuming the loan guys means that they get the loan in your name instead of
Yeah,
their name. But how much does that cost?
it's usually a 1 to 2% loan assumption. So 1 to 2% of the total loan amount. So it can be
Dude, that's
expensive.
iffy.
You still have to qualify, right? Like you still have to have the net worth of the loan amount and the 10% liquidity. The big advantage with them right now, though, is you can find some assumable loans at 3.5% interest,
Right.
as opposed to if you were to go out now, you might be getting a 7% interest loan from
Right.
them.
That 100% makes sense. So we're coming to the end right now of the podcast. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
What the last question I usually like to ask is if you could go back to Ryan right when he was starting either in investing or in property management, you can choose. What would you
Okay.
tell him then with all the stuff that you know now?
Yeah, I would tell that Ryan to be a little more confident in what I did know, and B, don't wait so long to go out and network with other entrepreneurs, real estate investors, and
Love it.
really just immerse myself in that, because I was really hesitant at first, and I am kind of a reserved person. So at first, going to events, it was hard for me to reach out to people. And I wish I would have just been like, you know what, Ryan, don't be so silly. Just go dive in, go to as many meetups, groups, go network as much as you can, and also bring value to people sooner. It took me a long time to realize that I did have some multifamily knowledge and that a lot of people could benefit from it. So
I love it. So tell me, like, how can my audience help you? Like, what are you trying to plug? How do people reach out to you? All of that type of stuff.
yeah, I'm trying to look at and find as many multifamily deals as possible. Um,
What
so
areas?
I'm looking really heavy in Utah and Arizona, but I'm also looking in Texas and the Southeast US. So I have quite a bit of friends and partners doing deals in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama. So open to look at any deals there. I'm really heavy into creative deals, even if it's just a percentage of seller carryback. And yeah, you got people can reach out to me. It's just my name is my Instagram handle as well as Facebook. And I just started a YouTube channel too, just highlighting some management and multifamily tips. So
Like that, right?
yep, perfect.
And then you look up your name for YouTube?
Yep, it's just YouTube at Ryan // at Ryan Kocherhans. So
I love it.
I'll be
Awesome.
putting more content on there as we go. So
I love it. So is there anything else? Any last words you want to say? Anything you want to plug? Anything?
yeah, no, if anyone's looking for help or multifamily, definitely feel free to reach out. And Jonah, as always, nice seeing you again, and
Yeah,
I'm
man.
honored to be on. And thank you for the opportunity. So
As always, guys, for sure hit him up. Have this guy in your be cool enough, bring him enough value where you get in his phone bank. You're gonna want to do that. This guy is the multifamily guy in sub two. He is somebody you guys want to know and somebody who will 100% make you a millionaire if you become his best friend. Like it's just gonna happen. 100%,
thank
guys.
you.
So cool. With that, next week we got Alejandro Alvarez. He's a beast. That'll be Thursday, 5 p.m. PST. We'll be back to our normal schedule because this is Thanksgiving. I want to say happy Thanksgiving, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. And yeah, I will see y'all next week.